Great to connect with you all today. We have a very distinguished set of leadership in the panel. Um, just to give everyone an idea about what we are going to discuss, right? Like we are in the era of generative AI. None of us can deny what generative AI is, the way generative AI is impacting our lives, right? In spite of the hype. But as we have been experiencing generative AI, we also have realized that generative AI alone is not enough to scale at an industry level. So enter agents. So it begs to ask a question, are agents good, better than generative AI? And that's what the distinguished leaders here are going to help us understand. And I'll be shooting a lot of questions, and we'll be learning a lot from the answers from each of these leaders. So welcome all. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll start my first question with Dr. Abhijit. This question is primarily targeted to you, primarily because you can help us understand the foundations and the differences between generative AI and agentic AI. Right? There's a lot of noise about agentic AI, just like any other AI component that we have seen today, right? In fact, there is more noise that the ability to find out what is the signal is always going to be a challenge. So, and that's probably where you can come and clear things for us. So, from a platform standpoint, particularly in your current role, how do you differentiate between the architecture of what a vanilla generative AI versus what agentic AI is all about? How are they different? What are some of the components that clearly differentiate between agentic AI and generative AI? If you could elucidate us, that'll be great.
Thanks, Anand, for the question. I have to do this in next 5 minutes, I guess. It's a pretty difficult job, but let me go back to the history a little bit, right? What exactly are we doing at this point in time? What exactly the fundamental change that's happening across? So it's, I don't know how many centuries we are collaborating with each other, because we understand that intelligence is not about a single entity, right? It's about collaboration. And we have been collaborating with each other. The human beings are collaborating with each other for centuries. And we have been collaborating with each other specifically using our own natural language, right? And that's what made our current society possible. So the complex society that we have built, it's possible because we are able to collaborate. Now, around 1800, during the Industrial Revolution, we also found a way to teach machines how we can collaborate with the machines, right? And that's the first time our interaction with the machine, which is a non-human entity, that started. And the machines also started working along with us. But in 1950s, around that time, a very phenomenal shift has happened where the first computer blueprint came in, right? And instead of machines which are physical in nature, we started writing software codes, which is nothing but teaching the machines the work that we want them to perform in their own language, which is bytecode or machine language. That's what happened around 1950s. But now we are in a juncture of history where first time we are able to communicate with the machines with our own language, that is English. Starting with English, but it's getting expanded to other languages around the world. But within 3 years, and that happened in 2022, right? The research started in 2017 and it happened through ChatGPT in 2022. But within 3 years, what we are seeing is we are not limiting ourselves to communicate with the machines in our own language, but we are also making the machines talk to each other in our own language, which are nothing but agents, we are calling. Initially, it started with an assistive AI, right? We have a co-pilot which has access to certain data in your digital or virtual world, and you want that particular assistant as a co-pilot for you. It is not taking any decision. It was not taking any decision 3 years back. You are still in the driver's seat. You are asking certain questions to get the insights much quicker, much faster. But now what's happening is we are seeing more autonomous behavior from the agents, where within an enterprise, different business functions are creating their own agents, which are nothing but individual intelligence. But the true intelligence, or the super AGI that we are talking about and we are envisioning towards it, it will come only once all these agents start speaking to each other. And how does that happen? In a virtual world, you can imagine agents as very, very similar as human beings. We behave in the physical world. We connect collect data from the environment through 5 senses. Then we process that information in our mind. There are 2 different ways of processing that data. System 1 thinking, system 2 thinking, not getting deeper into that. But then after we process the data, we take certain decision, we act on the environment, get the feedback from the environment, keep those feedbacks in our memory, and then act again in a better way. That's how we operate in the physical world. And agents in the virtual world exactly operates the same way. So it interacts with the data through tools. After collecting the tool, it applies the reasoning capability through large language model. That is the hub of intelligence. And then it speaks, it generates certain monologue within itself, and then breaks down the task, and then act on the environment, get the feedback, improve its action in the next time, and that's how it goes on. And all these components that I spoke about, connecting to the virtual data storage, that's through tool. Then you have the reasoning capability through LLM. Then you have the short-term and long-term memory for making sure that you have learned from the past experience and then do a better job next time. So all these components are required in a platform, which we are enabling through the platform that we are currently working on in Fractal. Yeah, so that's pretty much in a nutshell what's happening and what we are trying to enable through this platform.
Thanks a lot, Abhijit. I think the masterclass will continue in the second round as well. But that's a good segue to come to you, Timo. You had a large engineering hub in Chennai and a lot of developers who develop products. And the talk today is, why can't I use agents to deliver software solutions? So code generation is something that we all know, generative AI can do, but beyond code generation, what do you foresee is the use of agents when it comes to software development, particularly towards the logistics and supply chain industry? Because I do believe, going back to what Abhijit alluded, there are a lot of integrations that are needed in your space. So how do you really make this happen when it comes to using agents, software development standpoint of view?
Also very good question, so many thanks for that. Yeah, so generally, I think so what we have seen, maybe also in the past, that we're making use in our, I would say, industry, but I think maybe the same for the other companies, that we are using a lot of assistance AI functionalities to improve the productivity of our colleagues in our company, also to improve the productivity of software development overall. And now I would say with this agentic AI approach, I think it will shift, so the mindset will completely shift from developing solutions, developing algorithms, into developing, I would say, just an intelligence, which is steered by by clear guardrails, by strategic goals, and by policies, so that the software you are developing is more or less finding the solution by their own, based on the guardrails, the policies, and the strategic objectives you are providing them. So it means the development will be completely automated in the future. So we will directly develop the algorithms, we will check, we will test, we will release, we will optimize. So the full application life cycle will be automated from our perspective. And we think that this will completely shift, I would say, the productivity in our industry. So as you mentioned earlier, so I think we are currently in the supply chain, or we are in the supply chain, not currently, because I think we will be there also in a couple of years. But for us, we have a lot of challenges. Our business is, I think, very complex and also very volatile, which means we really need to adjust our processes very fast. And this is where, from our perspective, agentic AI will be a very booster from my perspective. What is important from my side is to really to provide, I would say, the business context, so that the AI can develop the right thing for the right problem. So you need to provide a lot of data in the future. So this will shift, I would say, the workforce for being, I would say, an engineer with strong development capabilities, more to a data analyst, providing the right data, providing the right strategic goals, and this will be, in the future, I would say, main differentiator for the engineering excellence.
Great insights, because it's no more that just a developer would probably come in and use agents to develop code, but we still need the developer to really understand the overarching requirements so as to be able to really solve business problems. Thank you, Timo. I think it's getting heated up, so we probably have the right person to answer the next question. Priya, you focus a lot in managing huge volumes of data in your day in and day out work. Data fidelity, data governance, sovereignty, anything around data is probably your bread and butter. So, and all of a sudden in the traditional AI world, there used to be a saying that AI is all garbage in and garbage out, and that garbage refers to garbage data, right, most of the times. How is that changing in the agentic AI world, number one? And there are always questions and pointers and articles about agentic AI can come and miraculously change and cleanse data and make messy data super data, right? Like, what is your experience? Can you share some wisdom with us?
Okay, thanks for the question, Anand. And it's a very relevant question, right? And probably in the last 2-3 months, more than ever, I've been surrounded only with this kind of thing. What is that? You're going to bring changes using the agentic AI. Now, if you look at it traditionally, how the data quality pipeline, it used to rely a lot on the fixed rules which we used to give as an input. Then there used to be manual reviews or a batch validation. Now, all of this will fail when your data is going to be messy, if it's going to be inconsistent. And it's most of the time the data which we receive are in that stage. It's never the ones which is clean, right? But thanks to agentic AI, it's not all, it's not just about a hype, but in true sense, there is a shift from where we used to do a manually, like more from a fixed rule data correction, it's moving to an adaptive and an autonomous stewardship, if I have to say. So what I mean, probably let me take in context of NIQ, my organization, where we provide consumer intelligence data itself, right? Here, if we see the AI, where we use a lot is we have to detect data anomalies. Now, as you mentioned, we process trillions of data, not in a month, not in a year. On a daily basis, we process trillions of data. I don't think any organization processes that level of, that volume of data which we do. Now, when we do this, we can't obviously put manually sitting and correcting all of that. We need the system to be going and looking at what are those price spikes, what is the volume deviation, what is the missing UPC attributes and all of that. In addition to it, we also need to cross-validate all of these data with multiple signal. What do I mean by multiple signal is we need to see the past hierarchy or the hierarchical, how it was in the past, the product hierarchies, the multiple retailer feed which we're getting. All of that is important because for us, one thing is non-negotiable is the quality. We really can't go down, so we need to identify all this. With the agentic AI, what happens is now it kind of proposes and apply the corrections automatically in correcting all these, and normalizes these attributes, or when it has to reconcile the product hierarchy, or even if it has to like get those inconsistent, which is coming from the retailers, which it needs to fix. So overall, what happens is it's continuously learning, and in that process, learning from the outcomes, if you look at it. And from that, it improves the accuracy. It's not that you start with a clean stuff, but it's learning. It's not that you need to go and manually, again, provide those rules and fix it. That's not happening. So this way, at least what is happening is only those edgy cases where we need the human need to come into play. So overall, if I have to say is what's happening is the traditionally where all these engineers used to be sitting and coding all these cleaning rules, that's at least going off. What is now is with the agentic AI, we would be more in a form of continuously monitoring, repairing, verifying the data pipeline themselves. It's not about some human is coming and doing it, and that is extremely relevant, at least when you have to do data at scale, when you have to do it. So that's what I would say. It's more about, with the agentic AI, the manual data hygiene is getting off. Now we are more into the autonomous intelligent data stewardship is what I would say.
Great answer. I think it also probably begs to ask a question that when we put in agents, today agents are becoming so powerful, particularly with the advent of MCP servers and model context protocol servers, the ability to connect to your data lake and directly pull in insights becomes much more possible going back, and that kind of reduces the manual effort of monitoring as well. So thank you so much. Now, Shad, you've implemented, architected, designed, I should probably have said it in the other way, but you've designed, architected, and implemented a lot of solutions on AI, more around HR platforms as well. And when it comes to HR, it's all like extremely complex workflows. I think it's not just resume parsing, right? It's much more beyond that. So how do you see agentic AI transforming the experience when it comes to HR workflows, particularly in recruitment? And you could probably take other examples as well. And do you think there is a possibility in the future that an HR agent that autonomously, does talent acquisition, talent management, and drive the entire HR processes with employees as well as new employees that are joining?
Fantastic. Vanakkam, Chennai. It's just my local town. So I weave into the story of Abhijit, right? Like things started changing in 2017 after the release of the research paper, Attention is All You Need. And that gave birth to the architecture, transformer architecture. 2022, I think that's when we all got into a new way of interacting with the mass data the world has, right? From there has been disruption. I call these years our disruption. Generative AI was always there. I just wanted to give you some context why agentic AI is very powerful and how did we kind of leverage this concept, tech stack, across different processes and functions, right? So 2022, with getting into ChatGPT, how many people were like, we all know that generative AI was cool. It was generating a lot of good responses, images, videos, but it was not making business sense. We were getting charged in tokens, right? If you take a process, right, the process may have about 20 steps. Think of it, it will make business sense only if at least 18 steps are getting autonomously executed. And that's exactly where the lock was. And that's exactly where the opportunity was for the big players. And there came in agentic AI, which was giving that leverage for us to do straight through processing. STP is very, very key whenever we are transforming a process, right? So when we were able to get that STP closer to 90 and 95%, it was making business sense. And that's when we started looking at most of our process. One of the most complex process that exists in every organization is hiring. Think of it. You get you want to do, as soon as you kind of place a requisition in your job portals, what happens? It goes through the approval. After the approval, a job description needs to be written. A job description needs to go to the HR. And the HR will basically goes to multiple job sites, pull out the resumes, screen the resumes. They will do the first round of screening, and then they will send it to you. You have to review the resumes. And the reviewed resumes have to go back to the HR, and they will connect with the candidates. And the interview gets scheduled. Think of, at least from my experience, I've been into the hiring process ever since I took over Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence for my company. And it easily takes about at least 2 months from the time we decide to hire, at least 2 months to get that resume, right? Give or take minus 2 weeks or 1 or 2 weeks. How do we autonomously execute this with agentic AI is what we were able to transform in the HR ecosystem. From the time there is a requisition is done, what we did is we typically broken down this processes by brains. Agentic AI works on brains. The more cooler thing why I see agentic AI is going to be the future or probably is going to stay forever is the supervisor brain can actually work with all the other brains that we are creating. So what we did is we created individual pocket brains, a brain for resume extraction, a brain for creating job description, a brain for basically connecting to different job sites, a brain for connecting or filtering the right resumes, a brain for scheduling the interviews with the candidates. Think of it, as soon as I get a job description, this supervisor HR decides what needs to be done next. And he basically evaluates the performance of each and every brain. You're literally creating an organization. You're literally creating that HR brains using AI. And that, yes, absolutely, there were exceptions. I'm talking about the happy part. There are exceptions that we need to handle, manage when we are implementing the system in production. But given the short time, this is exactly what we were able to do. Now, which was basically taking 2 weeks, is basically taking 2 hours to get the right resumes from different job portals, right? The other side of it is when we are using AI to kind of source profiles, candidates are also using AI to kind of get the better resume uploaded, right? So there's a catch there. So that's where we are also integrating with virtual agents. As soon as an interview is scheduled, you don't need to talk to a interviewer. You basically talk to a virtual agent and record your set of questionnaires, which is also customized and very, very ad hoc. And based on their responses, agentic AI also scores them. And then if they clear that round, then goes to the actual human HR, human representative. This is how we have overall orchestrated it. It has a very, very strong pipeline, and it is one of the steady orchestration or probably business case that we have orchestrated in the recent times using agentic AI. Over to you.
Great, awesome. I mean, when you said that there is also another side or a darker side of applying agents, I think that's, I was reminded of one of my recent interviews where there was a candidate, he or she was talking, and it looked like they were looking somewhere and talking, and not to me, and it was very clear that there was an LLM that's running in front of the screen and trying to answer questions, right? So Newton's third law of motion is a powerful thing. There's, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So you all have to be cognizant of it and implement agentic AI in a responsible manner. That actually brings me to our next perspective of the session, where agents no more are just becoming just one-point solutions, right? They are like multi-orchestrated solutions. And Abhijit, from your perspective, heading Cogentic and the build of Cogentic, single agent systems are no more attractive. And even before we start realizing the power of single agent systems, we realize that there is no way that I can use this because my organizational processes and orchestrations are like much more complex. What is your experience with Cogentic in terms of using these multi-agent platforms? What are some of the benefits that you have seen, and what are some of the pitfalls, right? Like, if you could share it with us, that'll be great.
Yes, so there are different layers in it, and picking from where Naushad ended his story about the HR agent, right? And it's a supervisory agent. There are different brains connected to that agent, and that's the reality. Even if we are not seeing that reality today, that's the reality 5 years down the line, where every business function will actually be operated with agents. The HR business function, if you just keep the agents aside today, the HR business function is not an isolated function that works in an industry, that works for an organization. It has to talk to the marketing department. The marketing department has to talk to the sales department. The sales department has to talk to the operations department. And all of these departments are going to have their own agent. And very soon, we'll see that these agents are going to talk to each other, right? And solve complex organizational goals. And that we have started seeing in different scenarios. Now, getting into a little bit of technology, technicalities of how this is done, from the research community, there are 6 design patterns that are suggested that you can solve for any type of communication that's required for an enterprise. There are 6 different design patterns, starting from single LLM calling to a tool, to supervisor to a tool, to network, to custom, to supervisor, and then hierarchical. So these are the 6 patterns that are available. And in this, out of these 6 patterns, there are 4 patterns which are truly multi-agentic in nature. The network, the custom, the supervisory, and the hierarchical. All these 4 are truly multi-agentic in nature. And that's where all the agents that are built within an organization will start interacting with each other, following at least one of the patterns, or maybe a mixture of all these patterns together. So in any platform, be it Cogentic or be it any other platform out there in the market, should be able to provide all these patterns possible. When you're designing your solution, you should be able to design the solution keeping this playbook in front of you, that it should follow either of these, in one of these patterns or a combination of all these patterns. So that's very important, and that's what we are following. Now, going beyond that, the hard reality is all these agents that are being built across the enterprise are heterogeneous in nature. So let's say marketing department is using Adobe, and if I can take the name, so Adobe, they have their own agentic platform, their own agentic providers, and suddenly one fine morning, the marketing department is not going to take a call that I'm going to just let go of Adobe and use agentic or some other platform. No, it's not going to happen overnight. Similarly, sales team, they have been using Salesforce for long. Salesforce is just one software, Jan software that I'm talking about. There are many such sales-specific softwares out there in the market. They are coming up with the agent force, right? So there is a natural tendency that the sales department will move towards Salesforce. Now the enterprise, you can imagine the COE of the enterprise is probably looking towards Bedrock or Foundry. So you are living in a world, virtual world, where the complete ecosystem is heterogeneous in nature. Now, how do you make these communications possible? To your diverse data sets, that's one problem. The second is your diverse types of agents which are using diverse types of frameworks and LLMs. So that's where these protocols are being useful, the agent-to-agent protocol, the model context protocol for connecting to the data source, and the systems, of course. So this platform, or any platform rather, should be able to make this heterogeneous communication possible. And that's what we are trying to enable through our client implementation, through this particular platform. And we believe that anybody who is doing that in the organization should definitely keep this as a playbook in hand.
When, just out of curiosity, because you mentioned that obviously through an enterprise, the systems are heterogeneous in nature. They are also silos in nature, right? And you are bringing in some kind of a multi-agent framework like agentic that is going to probably unite all of this through, let's say, MCP. But just integration is, while integration is a challenge, it's just one piece. But how do we really make these agents effectively communicate with each other, right? That's a second thing. How do you think agentic-like systems are really making that happen?
So again, I mean, the answer again lies within these protocols. How effectively are you able to make this protocol work for your agents while it's communication between agents to MCP or agents to MCP server? It's nothing but it's nothing new. It was always there. The HTTP protocol was already there. Now we are actually changing that a little bit to make this happen in an intelligent way or without any tight coupling. So if you change your APIs today, your data sources today, the definition of your API, agents are smart enough to understand from the catalog, right, what exactly has changed, and depending on that, it's automatically changing the behavior of calling that particular API. So that's a loose coupling that we are coming up with, and that's very important because if you are directly calling the API through the agents, again, we are falling with the same problem of tight coupling of the systems talking to each other. So we are making this very loose coupling possible, both with A2A as well as the MCP. So there are registry catalogs that we are maintaining. So within your environment, within your VNet, if there are multiple agents running multiple MCP servers there, we provide a gateway on which you can register all your agents and all your MCP servers metadata, through which one agent knows in my environment who all are available, right? Who all are available with what sort of skills. Right, so going back again to Naushad's point, I mean Naushad's case study, the HR agent, when it gets a requisition and it has already done all the required tasks with the hiring, so the candidate is, let's say, onboarded, it's ready for onboarding. Now what next? Now it will go and look at the catalog that what next option do I have, which particular agent can take that decision on behalf of me and then call that particular agent. So that's the custom, orchestration or custom communication, collaboration that we are going to see very soon happening in the organizations.
Awesome, great. And I think it also reiterates the fact that there needs to be some level of supervision and a little bit of human in the loop when we are talking about multi-agent systems.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think we talked about straight-through processing, we talked about multi-agents, and I'm sure, Priya, in your day in and day out, you see it all the time with several processes, left, right, and center in your organization. So when we are talking about, and I've also seen that you're a big proponent of the fact that automation enhances rather than replaces human potential, and I believe in that holistically as well. So in an operations center, what is the ideal relationship that a human and an agent should have, right? Is the human going to be a pilot or the compliance officer?
Very interesting question, right? I guess pretty much whoever's in the AI side of the field get posed with this question quite often. And I believe it's not just the operations center, any function. For example, I heard now, then Abhijit, now even in the HR, it's like all through is all about AI, and even the coding world is all becoming about AI, right? So, so let me say in general, the relationship which I see is more where the human play the role of a pilot, and I would say the autonomous agent would play the role of a co-pilot. And it's not going to be the other way around at any time. At least I don't see it happening. The reason being that the autonomous agent, if you look at it, they're great when it comes to speed, consistency, or any pattern detection. But human, at any time you see, they're very good when they have to understand the context, judgment, or take the accountability. So none of that is ever going to get replaced. It's just about elevating all of that which the human are doing today. So I would rather say it as the human, you look at them as a strategist. When I say that, they are the ones who are fundamentally looking at what are the objectives of the organization, what are the policies, what are the constraints within which we need to work around, right? So that probably will set the direction. What are the performance metrics matter to me? Well, how am I going to handle the trade-off? What are the exceptions or the nuances which I need to handle? Not that every single thing I have the time and bandwidth to be going and looking into, so what is that I need to do? As against, your co-pilot or the autonomous agent is the one who will continuously execute, monitor, and take real-time decisions. That will detect your anomalies, that will go ahead, trigger all the workflows, and we spoke about even that it'll constantly keep correcting and learning, and it will summarize all what's happening and decide what's the next step. Now, having said that, because you asked even another part of it, right? There is a human who plays the pilot role. The autonomous agent is playing the operational co-pilot role. But additionally, the humans step in to play the compliance officer, or what I would say as the ethics guardian here, because with all this happening in AI, it's important that the data is compliant. We're working within the various, what are the business rules within which we are there, and we're not missing that by a beat, because that's super critical. While we do all of this, that's not something which we can take for granted. So that's something which we have to always have a tab on. So the relationship is more, I would, again, to summarize, I would say that it's human as a pilot, autonomous agent as an operational co-pilot, and human, again, stepping in to do the compliance officer, which I would say this relationship would, in a way, amplify, with the automation amplification, would improve the overall human potential itself, which is what I see. Never is it going to get replaced, at least.
That's really heartening to hear, primarily because I think we ourselves, when we keep using these agents, we tend to become the co-pilots than the pilots, right? So we got to keep reiterating to ourselves. I think that's a good segue for my next question to Timo. In your world, there are many organizations that are using AI-driven models for pricing, for capacity planning, for primarily trying to bring in operational efficiencies, right? Do you foresee that AI agents in the future would start making pricing decisions, changing rates autonomously? And do you think that that's good in the industry? And what are your thoughts about it?
Yes, so generally, I think we are currently, I would say, near to a shift from this analytics support or analytic systems to this, I would say, more or less autonomous intelligence in this regard. So as mentioned also earlier, so in the shipping or in the container industry, we are having a lot of, I would say, challenges. So we are dependent on geopolitical scenarios. We are having different trading between the continents. We have tariffs and so on and so forth. We have equipment shortages based on the imbalanced trades and so on and so forth. So we have a lot of challenges, and we have a lot of also, I would say, improvement potentials to come to a better and faster decision taking. So therefore, I see, also if you ask me, so do I think maybe that this is, I would say, generally possible? Then I would say definitely yes. And from my perspective, it's also not science fiction, so that it's maybe not possible, because I think technically wise, I would say it's already possible. The thing is maybe just how to adapt this in your company, because from my perspective, this is also big change management. You really need to build a trust into the technical solution. This is especially for the traditional companies like we are. So we were founded, I would say, 1847. So we are a very traditional company. So I think that trust in the technology is not super huge, and this needs to be built in the industry. This also starts. This is more change management from my perspective. This also starts with building the capabilities in your company and your enterprise. You need to very often, if those trends are starting, so most of the companies are just setting up one central department who should focus on that, right? But this is not really building the trust in your company. You really need to build the capability everywhere in the organization to scale this at the end, right? And to make use of it at the end. So therefore, for me, it's very important that we are able to build this capability into the organization, build the capability into the organization to be future ready for this kind of technology. And then for sure, I think maybe in the future, very soon, agents from other companies will discuss with our agents and negotiate the price with our agents. And then maybe you also need to think about what is the USP in the future. So if agents are talking to agents from different companies, so and then maybe you have to decide which kind of invest you need to take in your organization. And I think the majority is you need to have better data. You need to be able to interpret the data better. You need also better strategic goals and guardrails for your agents, so that you can then, I would say, in a competitive environment, can be or can take some, I would say, benefits out of it.
Awesome, and I love the response, primarily when you insisted on the fact that there needs to be trust established between the human and the agent, right? Like particularly when it comes to pricing decisions. I think one of the leaders in the earlier panels also addressed that agent is not just technology, but it's also a culture that we need to build into the organization. So very well said. I think that brings us to a very important yet foundational topic, and no one better than Naushad to answer that. AI observability. Like we've talked a lot about application, software observability. We talked about audit trailing. We talked about applications being monitored. And then traditional AI platforms came in, MLOps started taking the rounds. As much as there were rounds, there were implementations that were not that heavily followed. Now we are really treading into generative AI and agentic AI, which are both efficient and as well as scary. So AI observability is a very, very critical area that almost all organizations have to think about. But the sad state of affairs is also that we think about AI observability only after we finish an AI project and then say, hey, what do I do to make it and monitor it and manage it, right? What is your experience in that, Naushad? And where do you see that this needs to become an observability-first application building versus you build the application and then bring in observability? What do you think is the future going to entail, particularly with agents and observability?
What do you want? How do you want my token size to be? Output token size to be? We're living in the world of tokens. So it's a broad response, right? I always say that nowadays our AI is an API away, right? You connect to an API. So that's the most easier part, right? We forgot the groundwork of building an ML model, deep learning model. It's all large language models these days. That also increases the risk of data security, data theft. And it also increases largely with large language models. You can't, what is more important these days is you designing, developing, deploying has become easier. Hope everyone in this room will agree. With anti-gravity, with cursors of the world, with co-pilots of the GitHub co-pilots of the world, with Codiums of the world, making it easier for us to bring in the right code stack for us to put this product in production. What is happening after production is, the major task is to ensure that your AI brains, your large language model is working in the way that it's supposed to work all times. How do you manage it? That's exactly what this traceability, observability kind of plays a key role. If I have, like, as soon as this bus is going around, I understood that this is exactly where I need to focus, and that's exactly where I'm focusing these days, right? AI ops, AI security ops. What has happened over a period of time, without guardrails, we don't want to put in any agentic AI solutions in production. Guardrails are basically input guardrails and output guardrails. Typically what happens, there is a prompt goes to a large language model, and the large language model gives you the output. How do you control it? Between the prompt and LLM, how do you control that input? After large language model providing you the output, or small language model providing you the output, how do you kind of filter it out, sort it out, and kind of score that output and kind of ensures that your model or your AI brain works the same way or the expected way all time? That's more important. When we build these guardrails, what happens is there are quite loopholes, like large language model with, there are upcoming research papers. I don't know if you are interested in studying about this. There is a LLM poisoning is a research paper, very cool research paper. And we ourselves, our research group is also working on LLM cancer. So which basically means that one set of tokens or a group of tokens can corrupt your data set. As soon as your data set is corrupted, think of it. You will never be able to control it. So the entire observability, every brain operation of every brain that you put into production needs to be monitored to the nth level. How the performance are, what is the hallucination score, what is the faithfulness score, and those metrics. And there are platforms which is LangGraph, ArraysFlow. There are absolutely good, Langsmith actually. There are good platforms which provides you this, that the control over the AI brains that you put in. But it is becoming very important. We don't want to put any models into production without these guardrails, because it's very tough to manage large language model. We will, even if you ask me the same question, I will think and respond in a different way. The context might be the same, right? Similarly, AI will also, the large language model will also give the same context, but in different terms. But over a point of time, with people getting smarter with prompt injections and all those, like one of the cool example, or with red teaming, we had a red teaming. I'll just double click on this use case. We have a red teaming which basically wants to crack in, or probably before we put in any solution into production, we wanted the red team to kind of vet this, right, from all corners. What typically happens is one of the solution with good prompt injections, with good manipulation of the large language model behavior, we were able to get critical sensitive information of your higher ups, right? So this is very critical, right? So these things are very important, and I always say that LLM needs to be very used cautiously. We always, like, there are macros, there are automations, there are typical RPAs, there are typical ML and DL solutions still serve the purpose. Let's not forget to use them wisely and nicely. That's my overall point of view.
That's a great input. And I always believe that while we are setting up agentic platforms, there should be some level of deterministic rules that have to be in place for us to make sure that the right kind of guardrails are there. I think you nailed it. We are almost at the end of the session. I would probably leave it to the audience for one question, if there is any, and then we can conclude.
Audience, please put your hand up if you have a question for our panelists, and somebody from our team will come around with a mic. Yes, we have a question over here. Could you put your hand up, please? Can we get the mic to him, please?
Have you already implemented any AI-based use cases at your organization? And are you seeing the efficiency?
If it is for me, absolutely yes. my paycheck is on implementing AI. So I do it for living. Starting from the HR use cases until the manufacturing use cases, we have built a lot of AI work. We work with a portfolio company in US where we help them predict their business metrics, which indirectly helps them predict the stock price movements. So that's a deep work that we have done. And I do it for living, starting from HR until manufacturing. Absolutely, I cover 11 verticals, and yeah, I can go on and on.
Okay, thanks, Naushad. I'd like to conclude the session. We have heard from the leaders who are not just technologists, but who are practitioners of AI. I'd like to double click and reiterate that. This has been a wonderful and rewarding session for me, and I'm pretty sure the audience would probably also appreciated it. Thank you, Abhijit. Thank you, Naushad. Thank you, Timo. And thank you, Priya.
What an incredibly honest and insightful session. Thank you so much to our panelists. I now request Ms. Kavya from NASSCOM to please hand over a token of appreciation to all our panelists. Can we keep the round of applause going, please? A round of applause for our second panelist. Thank you so much. Another round of applause for our third panelist. Thank you so much. And a final round of applause for our fourth panelist. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our moderator.